Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm live and we're recording now.
Perfect. Okay. Board members, staff, guests, and members of the public are reminded that the Full Authority Board Committee meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the authority's website along with the official written minutes. As such, comments and opinions expressed may be published, and any comments expressed by individual board members, guests, and the general public are their own and do not represent the opinions or comments of the full authority and/or the KCCA Board of Directors. This recorded video of the full authority meeting is not considered the official record of the meeting. The official record of the full authority meeting shall consist solely of the minutes approved by the full authority. Welcome everyone to this special meeting today. At that point, I will turn things over to Elizabeth for a roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dennis Kravitz.
Here.
Dominique Giguère.
Here.
Stephen Harvey.
Here.
Herbert.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Mackey.
Here.
Peters.
Here.
Pelosa.
Here.
Warwick. Allison. Allison, you're muted. Ralph Winfield.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I'm just going to try to message Allison.
I said here.
Oh, I got you, Allison. Thank you. I knew you were here, but we didn't quite get it.
I think my internet's getting a bit funny.
Okay. All right. With that, because this is the first meeting of the new year, I'll announce that the chair and vice chair positions are vacant. I do have a recommendation from the membership that Kevin Jackson be appointed as interim chair for the purposes of conducting the elections, and would look for a motion in that regard. Can I have a mover that Kevin Jackson be appointed as the interim chair for the purposes of conducting the elections for chair and vice chair?
Pelosa.
I have moved by Peters, seconded by Pelosa. For the motion, Kravitz,
Yes.
Giguère,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I would now place the meeting in the capable hands of Kevin Jackson and ask him to read out loud the procedures for the members.
Good morning, everyone. The election for chair and vice chair of the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority for 2021 will be conducted in accordance with the Conservation Authorities Act and KCCA's administrative regulations as follows. Scrutineers. The appointment of one or more scrutineers is required for the purpose of counting ballots. Should an election be required, all ballots shall be destroyed by the scrutineers afterwards. As this meeting is being conducted virtually, an anonymous online poll noting the nominations will be administered to the members. I have a recommendation in front of me that Dan Dale act as scrutineer and that the results of the online poll will be destroyed after the election. Can I have a mover and seconder for that motion?
I would move.
Harvey.
So I have Ralph Winfield moving, Stephen Harvey seconding. For the motion, Kravitz,
Yes.
Giguère,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I declare the motion carried. Election procedures. The election shall be conducted in the following order. Number one, election of the chair. who shall be a member of the authority. Number 2, election of a vice chair, who shall also be a member of the authority. I will ask for nominations to each position. Only current members of the authority who are present may vote. Nominations shall be called 3 times and will require only a mover. The closing of nominations shall require both a mover and a seconder. Each member nominated shall be asked to accept the nomination. The member must be present to accept the nomination unless the member has advised the secretary treasurer in writing or by email in advance of election of their willingness to accept the nomination. If there is only one nominee, the individual shall be declared into the position by acclamation. If there is more than one nominee, an election will occur. Each nominee shall be permitted not more than 3 minutes to speak for the office in the order of the alphabetical listing by surnames. Upon the acceptance by nominees to stand for election to the position of office, an online poll will be presented to the members by the scrutineer for the purpose of election, and I will ask members to answer the poll indicating their preferred candidate. The scrutineer will review the result of the poll and advise the acting chair who was elected with more than 50% of the vote. A majority vote shall be required for election. If there are more than 2 nominees and upon the first vote, no nominee receives the majority required for election, the name of the person with the least number of votes shall be removed and further consideration for the office and new ballots shall be distributed. In the case of a vote where no nominee receives the majority required for election and there are 2 or more nominees and where 2 or more nominees are tied with the least number of votes, a special vote shall be taken to decide which one of the tied nominees' names shall be dropped from the list of names to be voted on in the next vote. Should there be a tie vote between the 2 remaining candidates, a new ballot in the form of an online poll shall be distributed and a second vote held. Should there still be a tie after the second ballot, a third vote shall be held. Should there be a tie after the third vote, the election of the office shall be decided by lot drawn by the acting chair. If the members understand these procedures, we will begin the election with the election of the chair. Okay, I see no hands popping up, so I will go ahead. Number 1, I would now call for nominations for the position of chair for the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority for 2021.
I nominate Grant Jones.
Can I have a mover for that? Or actually, it only requires a mover. Sorry, that is the mover. Apologize. For the second time, I would ask for nominations for the position of chair. And for the third time, I will ask for nominations for the position of chair. All right, I would request a motion to close nominations for chair.
I would so move.
That's Ralph.
Yes.
And a seconder?
Harvey.
Okay,
So to close the motions for chair, I have a mover of Ralph Brunfield, a seconder of Steve Harvey. On the motion, Krebitz,
Yes.
Jiguer,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield.
Yes.
And that motion passes, Mr. Chair.
okay. I would now like to ask whether the nominee, Grant, is willing to let his name stand and also allow you the opportunity to speak for a few moments if you would like to.
Yes, I'll let my name stand. Thank you. I'd
Okay,
like to thank the board members for their support and confidence in my abilities.
all right. So Elizabeth, then we would then declare Grant the chair by acclamation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So we will now move on to the office of Vice Chair. I would request a motion I would request nominations for Vice Chair at this point.
I nominate Allison Warwick.
I would request for a second time nominations for Vice Chair.
I would nominate Dennis Kravitz.
Okay. And I would now request for a third and final time nominations for the position of Vice Chair. I would request a motion to close nominations for Vice Chair.
Pelosa.
Herbert.
Pelosa and Herbert.
I have a
Turn it over to
mover of
Elizabeth.
Pelosa, a seconder of Herbert to close the nominations for vice chair. On the motion, Kravitz,
Yes.
Jiguer,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield.
Yes.
And that motion passes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I would ask whether the nominees are willing to let their names stand.
Yes.
Kravitz speaking. At this point, I appreciate the support that was given and anybody who would have supported me, but I'm going to decline the acceptance of the nomination at this time due to time constraints.
Okay. And I believe it was Allison.
Yep. I accept the nomination.
Okay. Would you like to say a few words, Allison?
Sure. I would like to thank the outgoing chair and also the confidence of the board in me for this new position. I think that it's a great board and I look forward to better days ahead in 2021 where we all might be able to see each other face to face at some point. So as I say, better days ahead. Thank you.
All right. As there is only one nomination that is willing to allow their name to stand, Allison Warwick is the winner of vice chair by acclamation. Okay, Elizabeth.
Yes, I have a new chair now and I have a new vice chair, which is great. And I thank you for your duties here today and for Dan Dale being on standby to launch our first electronic ballot that we came very close to doing. But unfortunately, we didn't have to do that. So I appreciate the help of both of you gentlemen today. And we'll turn everything over now to our new chair, Grant Jones.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yes, I'd like to thank Stephen for the past 2 years. You've gone through some difficult times with some of the things we've had to deal with, and especially COVID and going virtual. Thank you for your guidance and moving us forward. Thanks, Stephen.
Very
Okay.
well.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Kevin and Dan, you're welcome to stay for the meeting or you can log off at your convenience.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I will log off as I have another meeting to go to. Pleasure seeing you all and good luck with the balance of your meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Congratulations, Grant and Allison, and I too shall leave.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, next on our agenda is we have a few more appointments. Seconds, Conservation Ontario. Elizabeth?
So Chair, I just asked that the PowerPoint be moved forward. Great. So the next thing that we do have to look after is our committee appointments. The executive committee consists of the chair, which now would be Grant Jones, the vice chair, Allison Warwick, the past chair, Stephen Harvey, and we have two positions to be elected. To start that discussion, just to refresh the board's memory, The 2020 executive consisted of Steve Harvey as the chair, Grant Jones as vice chair, Bill Mackey as past chair, Allison and Dominic as the elected members to that board. So, Mr. Chair, you can open it up to nominations, and we can certainly have an election for those members, or see if there's 2 willing members to come sit on that board.
Okay, I'll open the floor up to nominations. No one's chomping at the bit.
I would nominate Elizabeth Pelosa.
Thank you. Any further nominations?
I would nominate Dennis Kravitz.
Thank you. Any further nominations? Seeing no further nominations, can I have a motion to close the nominations?
So moved.
Harvey and Winfield, I believe, was the second one.
So it was moved by Harvey, and I'm sorry, the seconder?
I think it was Winfield, I believe.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was the motion to close nominations for the executive committee. Kravitz,
Yes.
Jaguar,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey.
Yeah.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield.
Yes.
And that motion passes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So I'll ask both board members if they will stand, let their name stand.
This is Kravitz here. I will let my stand sit for this committee.
Thank
And
you.
thank you.
Elizabeth?
I'll allow it to stand.
Okay, thank you. So we will have an election.
So, sorry, Mr. Chair, there's 2 positions open.
Oh,
So if
that's
the
right.
members are willing, if both names stand, then I would say the elected members to the executive committee would be Pelosa and Kravitz for 2021.
Correct, I'm sorry. All right, motion to close. No, we already done that.
Yeah, we've done that.
Okay, so we're moving on to our next appointment, which is Conservation Ontario for an alternate.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, last year Dennis Kravitz was the alternate for this appointment. I don't know if he wants to let his name stand again this year, or if another member would be interested in being an alternate to that committee. They meet about 4 times a year. Typically they're in Toronto, but currently they are being held virtually.
Okay, I guess motion, any nominees out there or people? Dennis, are you interested in still standing?
I would still stand, but if somebody else would have an interest in joining Conservation Ontario, I'd be more than willing to let them stand. Is there anybody else on the board that would be willing to do this? Again, nobody's jumping, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Anybody interested? I'm sure Dennis won't mind. I'm not seeing any takers. Anybody want to nominate somebody? Well, seeing no nominations and no one standing up, Dennis, I guess you're the guy, if you're willing to stand for it.
I'd be willing to stand for it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, if that's the case, the Lake Erie Region Source Protection Committee doesn't require anyone. Usually we do the chair and the general manager appointed to that committee. And the Western Fair Association Allison too can be appointed, but through discussion last year, Allison Warwick volunteered to sit on that committee, as she also sits on it for her own, I think, municipality or the county, can't remember which, the county. So if the members would like or are willing to let Allison still sit on that Western Fair Association as she's willing to, we could do one motion just confirming Dennis Krebitz for Conservation Ontario, the chair and GM for the Lake Erie Region Source Protection, and Allison Warwick, she would let her name stand for the Western Fair Association.
Okay. Allison, are you willing to let your name still stand?
Yeah, it's fine. As I said, I'm already on that committee representing the county, so it's no problem. And as of right now, that particular committee is on hold until there is some programming to discuss, because of course, with COVID, everything's just sitting status quo at the moment.
Okay. Is there anybody else that would like to, is interested in the position?
Peters will make the motion for the 3 appointments.
Okay.
We have a
Any-
seconder for that motion.
I'll second it.
Harvey?
It was actually Winfield, I believe,
Oh,
Mr.
I'm
Chair. So I have Peters moving and Harvey seconding. So on the motion that the chair, GM, Dennis Krebitz be Conservation Ontario reps, the Lake Erie Source Protection Committee be the chair and the GM, and Allison Warwick sit on the Western Fair Association. Krebitz,
Yes.
Jaguar,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes,
Winfield,
Yes.
and Jones.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. I guess next on the agenda is signing officers.
Mr. Chair, this is a standing motion that the signing officers for the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority for 2021 be one of the chair, vice chair, and one of the general manager, secretary, treasurer, or assistant manager, supervisor of planning and conservation areas.
Krebitz moved.
And seconder,
Herbert.
Herbert seconds.
So on the motion, Krebitz,
Yes.
Jaguar,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa.
Yes.
And that motion passes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Item C, borrowing maximum.
Again, a standing motion that the borrowing maximum for the Kettle Creek Conservation for all expenditures in 21 be 200,000, and further that signing officers be authorized to execute the necessary documents in this regard.
Mover for the motion,
I would then move that. It's Ralph.
Winfield. Seconder,
Warwick,
Warwick. Call the vote.
On the motion, Krebitz,
Yes.
Jaguar,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
yes,
Winfield.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
Thank you. Next, recommendations, appointment of auditor.
And again, that the firm of Grant Scott Ends be appointed auditors for the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority for 2021.
I would so move.
Winfield,
Jaguar, second.
I have Jaguar seconding. On the motion, Krebitz,
Yes.
Question.
oh, go ahead.
So I just wonder, how long have they been the auditors for the Kettle Creek?
they've been the auditors for the time that I've been here. So 18 years.
So is it something you look at every 5 years to see if you want to make a change, or is it just well, I'm just asking, is that the way it's always been?
Yeah, I think that with the new administrative regs, we would look at this within the next 5 years. I think that's in the new administrative regs.
Okay,
But
thank
we
you.
ha-
I know them well. They're excellent. I'm just curious just to make sure that
Yeah.
we're competitive, that's all.
On the motion, Krebitz,
Yes.
Jiguer,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes,
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey, Peters,
yes,
Palooza,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Ralph Winfield.
Yes.
That motion passes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And our final recommendation is appointment of solicitor.
That Grant Inglis and Trudy Moth be appointed solicitor for the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority for 2021.
Loza moves.
Mackey, second.
I have
I think
Palooza moving, Mackey seconding. On the motion, Krebitz,
Yes.
Jiguer,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes,
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
yes,
Peters,
yes,
Palooza,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
Thank you. And item F, meeting dates. Do we need to discuss that?
No, those were previously approved. I just put them in for the knowledge of the member and the public moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Any issues, anything that's going to be a problem for anybody? I haven't seen anything there that stands out since we aren't going anywhere for the near future. Okay, seeing none, I should ask at this point, any declarations of pecuniary interest, and these thereof? Any board members? Seeing none, we'll move on to the regular meeting for minutes from the meeting of December 16th. Any errors or omissions?
I'll move them.
Who's that?
Jim Herbert?
Herbert? Seconder?
Winfield?
Field?
So on the minutes, Krebitz,
Yes.
Jiguer,
Yes.
Harvey, Harvey, you're
You're
muted.
muted.
Can you give me a thumbs up if it's a yes? I see a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Herbert,
Yes,
Mackey,
yes,
Peters,
yes,
Palooza,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, we'll move on to matters arising. First, we have our January media report. Betsy, I assume you're doing this one?
Yeah, just a couple of examples from social media over the past month. So tree planting is upon us as we're hoping for spring. So all the forms and information is out to landowners now, and just highlighting some wetland projects that were completed in 2020.
Any questions for Betsy? Don't see any questions. Betsy, thank you. Are you doing project tracking or is Elizabeth?
I can do that, Mr. Chair. GWG Resources has been retained out at Lake Whitaker to do with the goal of improving overall health and rigor and assist with the transition of conifer plantation. They'll also be administering a tender process that includes circulation to approximately 15 loggers and lumber mills in the area. And we'll bring the results of that tender back to the board in the near future. We've been installing the Wi-Fi towers out at Dalewood and Lake Whitaker. And staff have been meeting with the Thames Valley District School Board to discuss virtual options for the Elgin Children Waters Festival. And we're in the midst of the year end and audit currently.
Okay. Any questions for Elizabeth? Seeing no questions, you want these as receive and file at the end, Elizabeth? Or
Yeah, I think there's a motion at the end to receive all
Okay.
the matters arising.
Right, thank you. Okay, if no questions, we'll move on to Jennifer and watershed conditions for January. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hello, congratulations on your new appointment. Sorry, for the watershed conditions report for this January, it's nice that the water levels are still being stable in Lake Erie. We've put out our standing messaging for storm surge for the month of January. And we did put out just a safety messaging earlier this week regarding unstable conditions for ice and reservoirs throughout the watershed.
Okay, any questions for Jennifer on the report? Seeing none, thank you, Jennifer. And I believe you're doing the next one as well for the Drainage Act proposed amendments.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick FYI for the board. There has been a proposal for some changes to the Drainage Act. The amendments will help to simplify the process for minor improvements and updates to the engineer's report. Staff have been following this. We attended a stakeholder webinar recently, and you can check the environmental registry if you want to see the paper that was developed for it, and we'll bring more information to the board as we get it.
Okay, questions for Jennifer on that one?
Just one question. How soon do you assume that the new Drainage Act will be in place? Do we have any time?
Thank you, Ralph. The closing date for the environmental registry is February 7th, and I imagine that there'll be still a lot of consultation. So it's unknown at this point when it will be finalized.
I guess, Jennifer, do you foresee this being more workload for you and Joe or whoever, or about the same, or you really don't know at this point yet?
I would have to say I don't know for sure. Some of the things probably will be a little streamlined, but I anticipate it'll be probably a similar amount of effort.
Okay. Any other questions for Jennifer? If not, thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Next is a notice of meeting for Conservation Authority levy approval. Elizabeth, I assume you're doing this one?
Yep, Mr. Chair, this letter went out to the member municipalities, just notifying them of the annual meeting coming up on February 24th at 10 a.m. And we will be hosting that virtually.
Okay. Any questions or concerns on that one?
Yeah, so Elizabeth, are you still catering this or not? The food's always so good.
I'll have the drones deliver the bacon to your houses that morning.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further concerns, I assume we have a resolution to receive.
Mr. Chair, the staff reports under matters arising A through E be received. I've moved by Mackey,
Harvey?
seconded by Harvey. On the motion, Krebitz,
Yes.
Jagger,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
And that motion passes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Next, correspondence. Anything there for anybody to identify needs to speak to? from your side, Elizabeth, anything there?
Mr. Chair, I just highlight, I know I circulated it out to members and there's been some publicity on it, but the Conservation Authorities Working Group the members have been named. And I understand that they're just getting started on their work. So there'll be more information coming out of that working group and I'll be able to keep members more up to speed on that. I think the most local representation that was named to that committee was Mark Wales, and then the general manager of Grand River, Samantha Lawson, was also named to that. So
Yes, it seemed to be very heavily weighted towards the east of us. That's
yes, it did. But Samantha is a really good representative, and I've already reached out to her in terms of keeping abreast about what's happening with that committee.
okay. Any other questions on any of the correspondence? Seeing none, resolution to receive and file is
Kravitz,
Jagger, second.
So on the motion of the correspondence, Kravitz,
yes.
Jagger,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Jones.
yes.
And that motion passes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll move on to statement of revenue and expense, the draft unaudited without transfers. Elizabeth?
Mr. Chair, I would just stress that they are draft at this point. They are unaudited. You will have updated statements presented to you at the February 10th meeting as part of that meeting to review. But overall, I'm pleased with the year end position. As previously noted, we expected that we would be around $100,000 surplus, and that's mainly due to the unexpected grant that we got from the Canadian Emergency, the CEWS. So that significantly helped out the year end position. But we'll have more details to come at the February 10th meeting. But in the meantime, if members have any questions or concerns, they can certainly reach out to me prior to that February 10th meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth. Any questions at this point? Seeing no questions, we'll, do you need a receive and file for that or just information?
I would like to a motion to receive. We're not approving, but just receiving those.
Okay, that was mover.
I move.
Warwick.
I think that was Winfield.
Yes.
Seconder.
Warwick.
All right.
On the motion, Kravitz,
Yes.
Jagger,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes,
And that motion passes, Mr. Chair.
thank you. Okay, we'll move on to new business. First item is Dalewood Dam geotechnical investigations. Elizabeth or Jennifer? I'm not sure.
Actually, Mr. Chair, we have the engineers from GHD that conducted this investigation to make the presentation of the final findings. On the line, joining us this morning is Hassan Galani. I apologize if I'm getting that wrong, and Pat Pradanovic, who undertook this study, and we've asked them to give members an overview and be available to answer any questions you might have. So I believe I'll pass it over to Hassan. Hassan, you're muted right now. I don't. Hassan, if you could hear me, you're muted right now. If you could unmute.
Okay, now can everybody hear me?
There we go, Hassan. Nice to hear you this morning.
Yeah, nice to, oh, yeah, nice to be here. Thanks for having me. Okay, so I was almost done with my presentation and when I was mute, but now getting back to it. So I was a project manager for this study, and one of the members of the team, Pat is here with me today to go over with this presentation. So this was a team that worked on it. So if we could move to the next slide, please. So this is one of the drawings which KCCA gave us. So the dam is about 4 meters wide at the top, and it has 2-to-1 slopes, and it was supposed to have a 1 feet wide concrete core in the center, and we could not see it. Obviously, it was hidden. It is buried in the dam. So there were only 2 ways to find out whether it is there or not. One was to expose it by excavating, and that was not a good idea. And that would have meant that we were digging a big hole in the dam. And one was to see if, and the purpose of this bore was to cut off the seepage going through the dam. The lake or the dam reservoir is on the right hand side, and downstream side is on the left hand side. So the water head is on the upstream side on the right hand side, and there is no water on the downstream side. So if there is water on the right hand side of this bore and there is no water on the downstream side, immediately downstream side or the left hand side, then it means that this bore is there and it is effective and it's not leaking. So we decided to put 2 borers, one on either side of this bore, and measure the water depth in both. And if there is an elevation difference between the two, or depth of water level between the two, that it means that it is there. That would have meant that it is there and it is effective. And because there are 2 embankments, one on the left hand side and one on the right hand side, and divided by the spillway, we put 4 borehores, 2 on either side. Next slide, please. So the background is that, background to this investigation is that in 2019 hazard potential classification study, which Pat did, Pat found out that if there were during a 25-year or not 25 years, during a IDF design flood, the water level will rise so much that it will be almost at the crest elevation. And if there were to, the dam will not be overtopped, that would not be overtopped, but if there were any waves, when the water is at the dam crest, the waves would overtop, and that's not good. That would jeopardize the safety of the dam. So, and the dam needs to be raised, embankment needs to be raised by about slightly less than half a meter, by 0.4 meters, which is give or take 1.5 foot. With anybody who is comfortable with feet. So 1.5 foot, 0.4 meters. Currently the dam crest elevation is 217 to 217.25 meters. The IDF flood elevation is 216.99, which is almost 217. And so the crest elevation needs to be 217.42. Number two, when we estimated at that time, we did not have any data about what was the dam. We knew that the dam is made of clay, but we just estimated that its shear strength values and estimated that the dam may not be meeting the factor of safety of the Canadian Dam Association. So that we recommended to KCCA that a geotechnical investigation should be carried out to see how stable the dam is, whether it needs any strengthening, and how safely it can be raised by its freeboard can be maintained to 17.42. So that was the purpose of the geotech investigation. Next slide, please. So objectives of the study, as I said, inspect the dam, complete a geotechnical investigation, and then provide recommendations to how the dam can be made safe, strengthening it and raising its, providing the freeboard. Next slide, please. So as I have already discussed this slide, that two sets of borehores, one on each embankment on either side of the cutoff bore. And then the other, that was the geotech investigation. And the other aspect of the study was to inspect high level structural evaluation of the wing bars and training bars, the concrete components. I was looking after the earthen, are the dirt stuff, are the things which are made of dirt. And Pat and Julie, who is not on this call today, but they were looking up everything which is made of concrete, wing bars, training bars, anything which is made of concrete. So I was responsible for the things made out of dirt, which is the two embankments. And Pat and Julie were responsible for looking after anything which is made out of concrete. Next slide, please. So when we did the geotech investigation, we did confirm that there is a 2.5 meters water difference. So these borehores are on the upstream side, and BH2 is in the right embankment, and BH1 and BH2 are on the right embankment, and BH2 is on the upstream side, and BH1 is on the downstream side. And water depth in the upstream side borehole is 2.23 meters, but we could not find any water in BH1. Same thing in on the left embankment, the water depth on the upstream borehole is 2.4 meter, and on the downstream side is 4.85 meter, a difference of what, 2.4 meters, which is 8 feet. In the difference of water depths was 8 feet between the two boreholes. So, and these boreholes are located about 2 meters apart. So 8 feet. These boreholes are located about 8 feet apart, and the water elevation difference is 8 feet, so 1-to-1 slope. And we know that water cannot maintain a slope; it has to be level. So there must be something between the two, which is making that, which is causing that elevation difference. And that thing which is causing that elevation difference is that concrete wall, which is 100 years old, but it is still effective and still working as intended. Next slide, please. Then we did a stability analysis. I would not go into too many details, but this table is basically from Canadian Dams Association, their 2011 guidelines, technical guidelines, which and they say that the dam should be checked for these loading conditions, and these are the minimum factors of safeties uh, against which these should be the minimum factors of safety that must be met. So there's earthquake, rapid drawdown. Rapid drawdown is when you have a upstream lake level and then somehow it gets dropped within 24 hours at a rate of 6 inches. Sorry, I misspoke. When for a clay embankment, if water the lake level is dropped at a rate of 6 inches per day or 150 millimeter per day, for a dam it is considered rapid. So it's quick. So lake levels are not dropped. It should take days and weeks to draw down. But if there were to be a flood, and flood passes through quickly, then that means that there could be a rapid drawdown. So we checked all those conditions, and there are about 40 figures, 40 slope stability figures. I have included only 2 of them in this presentation. Next slide, please. And this is one of the, and you see the factor of safety, the targeted factor of safety are any between 1 and 1.3 and 1.5. I'm getting 2.35, which is much more than the targeted factor of safety, which shows that the dam is, the slope is safe. The downstream slope is safe. Next slide, please. And for rapid drawdown conditions, the upstream slope, the factor of safety is 1.76 against the minimum required factor of safety of 1.3. So upstream slope is safe. It means that the dam in its existing condition is stable and nothing needs to be done to strengthen it. So that was the main finding of our study, that the dam in its present condition, the earthen part of the dam, is stable. Nothing needs to be done to stabilize it. It's stable enough, and it can, if it is maintained in its present shape, it can last many more years. When I say many more years, it means I'm not talking about 1 or 2 years. I mean many decades with proper maintenance. Next slide, please. So these are the factor of safeties we got. So you can see that all the factor of safeties are very above. Most of them are above 2. Everything is they're above 1.5, except these 2, and even these 2 are earthquake conditions where we needed just a factor of safety of 1.1. So these are stable. There is nothing which jumps out and say that this dam is marginal, is at a marginal condition, or at is just at the margin. No, this embankment dam is pretty much stable, and as I said before, with proper maintenance, this embankment dam can give a long service life. But next slide, please. Same cannot be said. Unfortunately, I did not include any photos here. I should have included. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Same cannot be said of the things made out of concrete. And here I will pass the baton to my colleague, Pat. Pat, you there?
Yep.
Yeah. So I
okay,
will let
yes.
Pat take it over from here.
Yes, okay. So Hassan just talked about the earth components of the dam, but a dam like this also has the concrete structure, which holds the water back. And when we undertook this work, we weren't necessarily tasked to do the full structural evaluations, but we did have some inspections of the structure itself. Particularly because one of the recommendations from our earlier study from 2019 was that the crest of the of the dam should be raised in the order of about a half meter. So we needed to look at the structure. We needed to look at the structure itself to see if the structure can support that extra raising of the dam. So we did a little cursory investigation of the structure itself. For that, we had our structural engineer do this, and we found out that there is quite a bit of deterioration of the concrete components of the dam, and various spalling. I mean, this dam is about 100 years old, and very little maintenance have been done on the concrete components. I believe last one was sometimes in the 80s or early 90s. So now it's the time to be considering doing something like this. So the structural engineer found that the wing walls were in quite poor conditions and needed some repairs to be done in probably the next 2 to 5 years. So it's not immediate, but it's not something that could be left for a long time either. Next slide, please.
So we gave them two options. One was that either they can place earth fill to raise the dam, and to make sure that there is no extra loading on the wing walls, they can put geoform. Geoform is just like insulation. It's lightweight and it does not exert any new loading on the wing walls. So geoform next to the wing walls, and then earth fill everywhere else. For first 3 meters, beside about 2 to 3 meters behind the wing walls, it will be the geoform, which is just like, as the name suggests, it's like a geoform. It's white stuff, looks like insulation, and or packaging stuff, what you use for packaging. But it's a bit high end, but it's extremely lightweight. Weighs about 1 pound per cubic meter. So, but the disadvantage is that because it's so lightweight, you have to anchor it in place. Otherwise, even slight wind and it can blow off. So you have to anchor it in place, and then it can be gouged. So it has to be protected by a cover. Kid can come and start gouging it, or an animal, mouse, or can come and start gouging it. So it needs to be protected. These are couple of, but once it is protected in place, anchored in place, it's and it is used. It's high compressive strength. It can be loaded. It is it can bear high loads, and then other places of the embankment you can place earth fill. Next slide, please.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
On that embankment, you talked about the geofoam versus the earth. Wouldn't putting earth on it be a much better alternative?
Yeah, we are putting
the geofoam.
Yeah, we are putting earth, but only behind the wing walls. We are putting geofoam. Only limited portion behind the wing walls we are putting geofoam. Just because we don't want to put extra loading on the wing walls. Every place earth, for example, the wing wall is, the embankments are about 50 meters long. So only 2 meter portion would have geofoam, but the remaining 48 meter long would have earth fill.
Okay.
So this is what it would look like. So it would have earth fill on the top, and to maintain this slope, you can obviously you cannot see my cursor, but on the downstream slope, to maintain the slope, you will have to put some filling. And
that's what we see as red on the picture, is it?
Yeah. So that's you have to maintain that slope, and I recommended that you put some stone on there. And next slide, please. The other option is do not put any earth filler, just put Jersey barrier on the upstream side. And it's next slide, please. And that's a Jersey barrier. You just put it on the upstream edge, and that's you just stand it. It gives you the freeboard. So you just put it on the upstream edge. You have and it slightly reduces your upstream crest width, but not by much. Even then, you can use it to pass your mid-sized trucks and pickup trucks, and this is the Jersey barrier, and you can it gives you the freeboard. And interestingly, this option is half the price of earth filling. We prepared a cost for both options, which is given on the next slide, I think. And this is an option. This is an optional maintenance of tree clearance, which we discussed with the KCCA. It was not part of the original scope of work, but we did discuss it that there are mature trees on the downstream slope, and the trees are not good. They can damage because of the tree roots can grow, and they can damage the wing boards and the concrete structures if they are pushing against it. And when trees die, they can leave space, a void space, and that void space can be a space for seepage. And if during a windstorm, tree toppers over, it can take a whole burb of soil with it, and leaving a big cavity. So better not to have any trees on the downstream slopes. So our recommendation was to just cut them as close to the ground surface, and then not to have those issues.
Really?
Okay, and next slide, please. So these are this is a cost estimate. So if you were to do a earth filling, it will cost about 139,000 before taxes, and if you were to do a Jersey barrier option, it will be around $69,000 before taxes.
So let me allow me this moment to just give a quick summary of the activities that were done here. So when we started this in 2019, a component was to look at the hydrotechnical assessment, to look at the water levels, to look at the consequence classifications, and to look at the overall broad context of the dam and what is essentially the one component. That was done, and it was determined that the dam is to be ranked low. That is the best conclusion that we could have possibly gotten for this dam, given that it's 100 years old and unknown, many components unknown. Then that particular study said that, okay, well, we have other components of the dam which are still unknown to us in terms of safety, so we got to start picking stuff and start evaluating. The next major component was the geotechnical slope evaluations, and that has been done in 2020. So the results came in, berms were good, no issue. There is an issue with the crest. The berms are not high enough, but not the greatest, not a big deal. Now, the next component that stems from this report is for the Conservation Authority to look at the concrete structure and its evaluation, because we believe that and the age of the structure itself is the next priority item on which the Conservation Authority should, as opposed to implementing any of these two options here. I mean, they should be, one of them should be implemented eventually, but I think the higher priority item will be to look at the concrete components of the structure and to carry out repairs on that. So I think with this, we will conclude our presentation here and perhaps welcome questions.
May I ask a question? How many trees are there that should be removed, and can they be removed by the Conservation Authority?
So there were some, and we've had some discussions with the Conservation Authority staff this summer about tree removal, and I believe, yes, either by the Conservation Authority or by a local contractor with some equipment, but I don't know where those discussions were there. So either Joe or Elizabeth, would you care to fill in?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if Jeff or Joe are still available, we've already started to look at those investigations, and staff have gone out and identified some of the trees that we would take down. I'll just let Jeff and maybe Jeff comment on that because he was working on the permits and everything.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through to Elizabeth. Yeah, we did end up applying to the City of St. Thomas to remove, I think it was 5 trees that met the requirements for requiring a permit through the City of St. Thomas tree cutting bylaw, and did receive approval for that. I know on the north section of the berm, trees have already been cut to allow the installation of a fence. I don't know if Joe wants to add something beyond that.
Hi, no, nothing further to add to that. Jeff's correct. The maintenance staff have been out and removed those trees on the north side of the dam solely to facilitate the installation of a barrier fence that was installed at the end of last year. And we've got plans to cut the south side slope later this year once weather conditions are more suitable. But from what I understand, based on Jeff's assessment and the coordinators with the parks, is that all of the trees requiring removal can be done by staff, that we don't need an outside source.
And excuse me, just one further thing then, can you also treat the stumps as has been suggested?
Yes, thank you, Ralph. I have product preservative I have put on the stumps that were cut, just to slow down that rot, so that'll allow other vegetation to take root, and hopefully will mitigate or reduce any of those concerns caused by the rotting roots.
Okay.
Okay, I guess my concern is one option obviously is about twice the price, but as far as longevity, obviously cost versus lifespan, which option is going to actually be more cost effective in the long run?
I don't know. I would probably answer that question by using the Jersey barrier option. It's just most simple. Probably would require less maintenance in the first place, because that expensive foam won't be, like, it's not there to deteriorate or anything like that. I say one of the cheapest and the simplest ways is usually the right one. So, yeah.
Mr. Chair, I just asked Pat to reiterate. I mean, there's always the option that we do nothing with the 2 options that were presented in this report. As Pat summarized there, the effort in doing this report was just to confirm the condition of those berms, the earth. And what we've been able to confirm is that this dam is still doing its job, and the berms itself are good. We don't meet the IDF, but we have also undertaken this year in terms of replacing the stop logs. And when the stop logs are lifted under certain storm conditions, we would meet the IDF. And so I think what staff need to do is we need to receive this report, but we also need to weigh our options into where the money that we have available for dam maintenance is spent over the foreseeable future. And if I can just have Pat reiterate that if we did nothing, but we have the stop logs raised in certain conditions, we would meet the factor of safety, and that perhaps our funds are better spent investigating the structure itself and getting those ring walls back up to an acceptable maintenance level than necessarily spending the huge sums of money on this aspect.
Yes, absolutely. Elizabeth, you run the risk of being an engineer. So this is great.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. That's exactly what we were talking about earlier, is is these two things are something that could be done to get the things back up to all standards, but there's a gazillion dams in Ontario that don't meet this standard with no harm. So my suggestion would be to probably the smarter way to spend maintenance, precious maintenance money would be to look at the components that are actually crumbling right now. And that is the concrete components of the dam. So the geotechnical studies were done and the analysis were done. Berms are safe, which we didn't know last year when we undertook the very initial work on this. So our recommendation will be to, if maintenance should be spent at Dalewood Dam relating to the dam or its components, they should be spent first on evaluating the concrete components and coming up with the repairs, whether they be local repairs, patch repairs, or something perhaps more intrusive. But absolutely, I agree with Elizabeth 100%.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
So, Mr. Chair, just to kind of summarize that, what I would ask is the board members receive this report today. And you'll note that in the budget for 2021, we've set aside about $50,000 for the Dalewood Dam. It would be the intention of staff to walk away, weigh our options, and again, bring back another report in the near future about how we would spend that $50,000 or go out and get price estimates on the structural components that Pat has identified that we should be concerned with, as well as doing the maintenance on the berm themselves in terms of ongoing maintenance with getting the trees under control and those recommendations that were included in this report. So today we're asking you to receive the information and we'll come back with a more comprehensive evaluation of how best to spend the money in the near future.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
I would move that we accept the recommendations in the report as it's presented.
Okay, seconder to receive.
Peters.
Peters, any further discussion or concerns?
Peters.
Peters
here.
Steve,
Yeah,
are you
ahead.
seconding or you have a question?
I'll second it, and I just have a comment.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Mr. Chair, it's interesting. As many of you know, I collect a lot of things and have been collecting things for a long time. And COVID has allowed me a chance to go through 30 years of accumulation of boxes. And I'll, if these can be of any use, I have a whole series of photographs of construction of the dam. So this is the east side, the wing wall leading up to it. This is, and they're all dated. This is 1921. So going forward, if these can be of any use to anybody, I'd be happy to loan them. There's a whole series of construction photos of building the dam. So let me know if they can be of any use, Elizabeth.
Absolutely, Steve. I'd love to have my hands on those.
Absolutely, yeah. That is gold information, especially on evaluation of the structural components. So big smile on my face when you said that.
Well, thanks, Steve.
There's a big stack of them.
I wouldn't call you a hoarder, but thanks for hoarding that for us.
Okay,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a mover and a seconder to receive the GHT report. On the motion, Kravitz,
Yes.
Jagger,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick, I see you say yes. She is saying yes. Just give me a thumbs up. She's
Yeah.
nodding.
Yeah.
Yes. Ralph Winfield,
Yes.
and Jones.
Yes.
And that motion passes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Hassan and Pat.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to our next item, short-term disability plan. Elizabeth.
Mr. Chair, this was a previous report that we had brought to the members to do a self-insured short-term disability plan. We've been working with Service Canada to get it reviewed. When they did their final review just prior to December, they found another thing that they've asked us to remove. And it was simply to remove the qualification that employees who are absent from Canada longer than 4 weeks due to any reason would not qualify for benefits unless KC agreed in writing. This has been struck out in the attached copy and would be removed from the policy. The qualifications were actually outlined in what you previously adopted in September. So just kind of a housekeeping measure, but I wanted to make sure that the board saw it and approved it for final submission to Service Canada.
Okay, any questions or concerns? So we have recommendation to approve the personnel policy PP08.
Mackey moves.
Herbert second.
On the motion, Kravitz,
Yes.
Jagger,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes,
And that motion passes, Mr. Chair.
thank you. Next item's draft 2021 budget. Elizabeth.
Mr. Chair, hopefully there is no surprises for the members in the draft budget. This is the first time looking at the detailed budget, but all of the elements that went into that have been previously reviewed and commented on by the board. So you know that there's a 1% levy increase, no cost of living adjustments, backfilling that maternity leave, one-time expenditures for floodplain mapping and paperless accounting. And we have accounted for just 80% of campground revenue again in 2021, just as we don't know what 2021 is going to look like. So we want to be cautious in what we're budgeting for next year. This does mean a $234,000 roughly drawdown from the reserves, but again, we're pushing approximately $100,000 from 2020 to the wage subsidy reserve in 2021. This will give us the assurances that we can go out next year, fully ramp up for our trail maintenance and our seasonal campgrounds without worry of the corresponding revenue coming from the campgrounds or any other outstanding COVID-19 restrictions. So again, this is mainly for information to get your sights on the details of the budget. The 2020 actuals will be added over the coming weeks. Once we have those finalized, they'll be added to the detail so you can compare that to these final numbers. Those will be presented at that February 10th meeting. And then you have final approval on the budget at the AGM. So I know it's a lot of information, but again, if members have any questions or concerns about any of those line items, I'm happy to have discussions with you prior to that February 10th meeting. But the February 10th meeting is kind of meant as that last look at the budget. So certainly welcome any questions today, but between now and next meeting as well.
Questions or concerns? I didn't see anything that jumped out at me as expected for myself anyway.
Again, nothing required today, but just again, if you have any questions or concerns, try to get them to me before February 10th so we can have those discussions then.
Okay, if there's nothing further, our next item, January planning regulations activity report. So Joe, I assume, is doing this one.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The staff report was in the advanced packages. Not a lot to report since the last meeting. Just looking for the membership to receive.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Any questions for Joe?
I'll move the report, Herbert.
Herbert. Seconder?
Warwick.
Warwick?
So on the
Any further-
motion, Kravitz,
Yes.
Jagger,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
and Jones.
Yes.
And that motion passes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we have nothing today for closed session, which has been a while since that's happened. So upcoming meetings, February 10th, a virtual meeting, 10 a.m. for the full authority, and AGM on the 24th. Anything else to cover, Elizabeth?
No, I think I'm done.
Okay, there's nothing else. Motion to adjourn. Harvey,
Kravitz?
Kravitz seconds. You call the vote.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Jagger,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick. I'm assuming she wants to end the meeting. And Ralph Winfield.
Yes.
I do, yep.
Grant Jones.
Yes.
And the meeting's adjourned at 11:24.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody. Take care.